Hi everybody, it has been so long since I've done a video mini album tutorial, so I am going to do one today. I have my Mintay papers collection here that I won from the March Facebook challenge. I am going to be using the photographer collection, so I'm very quickly going to go through some of the Mintay products and some of the products that I made to use with the album, and then we're just going to jump right into the tutorial. I am using the photographer collection. I have the 12 by 12 paper that they sent me here, and then I also have the stickers. So I've got these two sticker sets here, and then I have the ephemera or the die cuts that match the collection. Now this is all of the photographer collection that they sent me, so I will be using all of this in my album. And then I pulled this from the stuff that they had sent to me for winning as well. So it is decorative vellum flowers number 2. I'm only going to be using a small piece of this for the front of my album, I think, at this point. So if you don't have this vellum, if you have other vellum, or if you have acetate, you can substitute that. You don't absolutely have to have this, but since I have it, I'm going to try this out. And then I also pulled the Mintay Basic Travel Words. I'm not sure how this is typically sold, if it's just sold in a sheet like this. They had it all packaged with several different ones. I pulled this because I might use some of these sayings, but I have not decided yet because there are also some words here on this sticker sheet, so I may just use this instead. But since they sent it to me, I do have this here that I may possibly use. For my album base for this one, I'm going to be using black cardstock. I just have 65 pound from Michaels here, so this is going to be the pages and the flaps, but for the actual cover itself, I designed this chipboard cover. It will come in all these pieces if you purchase this. So it's going to have the front that is a camera shape. It does have some score lines here. That way you can place these pieces. If you choose to cover something with paper, it just gives you the idea so you know where these pieces go, just to add a little bit of dimension to that project. So that's what those score lines are for. So you'll get all of these pieces here, but you've got your front cover and then you've got your back cover. The back or the outsides are black, but the inside is white. And then we've got 3 spine pieces here. I'm going to be putting one here as a traditional spine, and then I'm going to be placing the second one here. And instead of having a cover go over top of the front, I'm going to have it extend down the side and it's going to latch on. So we're going to have a second piece here. So this one is going to have one on each side, and then rather than putting this one here, this one is going to attach to my cover, and then it will have a magnetic closure down the side. And then we've got our front piece here. So this will come in pieces. You'll have the part that it'll be flat. You will bend it into a circular shape and then use this to hold everything together. And then if you want to add this on as like the lens cap, which is what I may do, I may actually make this removable, and I'm thinking I'm going to use that vellum here to cover that. So we'll see what I come up with. So these are the pieces. This came out of here. I might put this here solid so that it's a little bit stronger, but I also have considered leaving it like this so that it looks like the viewfinder. And then these pieces will go here, doubled up, to give it some dimension on the camera as well. So all these pieces will come as part of a cover, and I will have that linked in the description box below if you want to purchase this. If you don't purchase this, you can just make your own cover, and I'll leave the dimensions, or I'll give the dimensions whenever I start the tutorial. So that will be next. Stay tuned. We're going to start by assembling the cover. So if you are not going to be using my cover, you will need 2 pieces that measure 8 1/4 inches by 5 inches. And obviously mine here are rounded corners, so I would recommend rounding your corners. I am going to round the corners on my pages as well. So if you wanted to make this shape, you could trace around chipboard and you could make your own shape like this if you choose to do so, or you can just do your 8 1/4 by 5" pieces here. Now for right now, this is all I'm going to be using, but if you wanted to plan ahead, you're going to need 3 pieces here, and these pieces measure 2 1/4 by 4.5 inches. So all 3 spine pieces are the same size. For right now, I'm going to flip over here and I am going to be working on the back side first. I have a Sharpie marker here in black. I'm just going to go around the edges of my pieces just on my covers. The spine pieces are going to be covered, but I'm going to make my papers whenever I put them on here a little tiny bit smaller. So you may end up seeing some of the white and I'm going to make it black. You can also use alcohol markers here or inks if you want to, or you don't have to do this if you're okay with it being white on the inside. I am going to color up here and I'm going to color up here in black, but then I'm just going to go around and ring each of these pieces. Now I do have a line here. I've measured, so I have 4.5 inches in the center where my spine pieces are going to attach, but I'll come back to this in just a moment. Once you have your pieces ringed, if you choose to do that, I want you to use your ruler to measure so you have 4.5 inches in the center. So I have my centering ruler here. And I have measured so that I know where to place my spine pieces. Because my cover is rounded, my spine is going to be smaller to accommodate to that flat section. So I've got that, so I know where to line up my pieces. And I only have it on this part because I'm going to start here, but I believe I am going to actually need it on this one too. So I'm going to mark this one in my center as well. So in order to do this, like I said, I use my centering ruler and I just place some marks where my 4.5 inch is on center. And then I'm going to very carefully draw my lines here, just very light lines. It'll be covered up, so it doesn't really matter. Oh, my ruler moved. I need to do this one again. There we go. So that I have my guidelines for putting my album together. I'm going to start with 2 pieces of black cardstock. These 2 pieces measure 2 3/4 by 4.5. I'm going to take one of my spine pieces and I'm going to be placing this one on the edge here so that the top and the bottom and the left edge line up. So there will be a tab section on the right-hand side of my piece. Now, once I have this piece done, I'm going to flip it over to the black side of the spine and I'm going to apply adhesive to this tab. I don't need to apply my adhesive all the way to the edge up against that chipboard because I'm going to be leaving a space between the pieces, but I'm going to be taking this and this. First, I'm going to flip it over in this direction so I can see where this needs to go. I'm going to line that up just to get it started. And then I'm going to flip over on this side and I'm going to leave 1/8 inch space between the cover and the spine piece. That way, whenever it moves, whenever the cover bends, I don't get any cracking because I have my space there to accommodate the cover. We're going to skip the center spine for a moment. We're going to take our next 2 3/4 inch piece. We're going to do the same thing on the next spine, but instead of it being against the left side, we're going to have it up against the right side in the top and bottom, leaving the tab on the left side. So once I have this piece, I'm going to be placing this piece here on the end of my back cover. So I'm going to repeat that same process as we did with the first piece. I'll apply my adhesive to the tab. It does not need to go all the way over to the edge of that chipboard. I'm going to first lay it down using that guide. Then I'm going to flip this over, move this out of the way a little bit, and then I'm going to come in here and leave my 1/8 inch gap. And then I will burnish this down. For my middle spine, I have a piece of cardstock that measures 3 inches by 4.5 inches. I'm going to start first by applying this right to the center so that I have a tab on each side. Once I have my piece covered, I'm going to start first by applying adhesive just to one tab. I'm applying it to the tab on the left side first. So we're going to place this here. Same thing, using those guides to stick that piece on first. Then I'm going to flip over and pull this apart so that I have about 1/8 inch between those pieces. And then I'll burnish this down. Then I'm going to flip this over and apply my adhesive to the second tab. And then I'm going to flip this piece over again to line everything up with those guidelines. And then I'm going to very carefully flip it one more time. So I have that 1/8 inch space between the pieces, and I'll burnish this down. Once that piece is on, I'm going to flip over to the outside, and I have cut pieces to cover each of these gaps. So I have 4 of these pieces. They measure 1 1/8 by 4.5. Now on each piece, I have scored this at 1/2 and 5/8 inch so that I have that little line on where it should be, or where that space should be, I guess I should say. And it's just for me to be able to line this up a little bit easier so I have an even tab on each side, and that's why I like to do this. So I'm going to take my adhesive and I'm going to apply adhesive to this entire back side of this piece at one time because it's all going to be adhered down. Now I prefer to use my liquid adhesive or my wet adhesive here. If you prefer double-sided tape, just make sure that you have the whole piece covered. And I'm going to just start here in the center. It really doesn't matter which one you start with. You just want to apply so that your tab is on the spine and on the cover, and your 1/8 inch piece, each of these score lines should go down each side of that piece, and you want to burnish this down. I'm going to take my next piece and do the same thing, and I'm going to do all 4 of these pieces, covering each of those gaps between my chipboard. Once all of my connector pieces are together, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry before I come back and start folding this into the cover shape. Once my papers are dry, I'm going to start here in the center. I have my bone folder, and I'm just going to very carefully first crease each of these just a little bit. Then I'm going to take my bone folder and crease a little bit more as I pull up on this cover. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just to start creasing that paper into those folds. So we have the start of our camera shape here. I'm going to come in here on this side and do the same thing. folding up at a 90-degree angle against that cover. And then the same thing on this side over here. So now this piece should flip up and this one will fold over here like this. I am going to be placing some magnets on my end here and on the other end. Now I have these magnets that are small, but they're a little bit thicker than I normally use for the inside flaps. So these are not my typical magnets. They're a little bit stronger. I'm going to use them for my cover. I have 2 sets of them. And so these are little tiny things here. They are 1/4 of an inch. I have measured here in the center 1 1/8 inch down, 1 1/8 inch up, and I'm going to be using a hole piercer, and I'm just going to pierce a hole through these covers. Now that I have that hole, I am going to take this cover here, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to hold this here to where it needs to go, and I need to make sure that it doesn't hit too far down. So I'm just going to very carefully line everything up and hold this in place, and then I am going to mark the centers here so I know where that second set of holes needs to go. And I am going to mark here and here. Then I'm going to take this and just double check to make sure they line up okay, and they do. So I'm going to take and I'm going to apply some double-sided tape across the holes, and I'm going to leave that tape backing on for now. And then I am going to drop this magnet right down in that hole. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Then I'm going to apply another piece of my tape over the magnet so that these don't fall out or go anywhere. I'm going to take my second magnet for each of those, place the adhesive here like this. Then we are going to go ahead and close that so that the magnets stick in there. One of them stuck in okay, so I'm going to leave that one like that for now. I'm going to very carefully peel this one off. This was the direction it was, so it needs to go. Once those are in, I'm going to flip this over and apply my second layer of double-sided tape. And now I should be able to put these there and it would adhere together, so my spines are flush. Now, if we didn't pierce holes, this spine would not sit flat because I didn't leave room. I didn't make one cover larger than the other, so those pieces are overlapping. So you need to make sure that you cut those holes or you pierce those holes so your magnets lay flat. Next, we are going to make the hinges for our pages. This piece is cut to 2.5 by 4.5. On the 2.5 inch side, I have scored every 1/2 inch. My second piece is 3.5 by 4.5. On the 3.5 side, I have scored every 1/2 inch. as well. Now I'm going to take my hinges and I am going to fold in both directions using my bone folder to crease these folds so that they're nice and crisp and nice and straight. I like to fold from the center outward. That makes sure that the piece doesn't shift and then not fold straight. So I have found that for me that works best, starting in the center and then going outward. And I'm going in both directions on my folds. That way when my pages turn in my album, they turn a little bit smoother. This is a stack the deck binding. So these pieces are going to be stacked on top of each other. And I have my 1/2 inch little page extensions that will allow my pages to lay flat. So that's what those extra pieces are for, if you are not used to seeing this many folds. I'm going to go ahead and continue folding all of these lines, then I'll come back and we will assemble the hinge and apply it to the album. Once I have my hinges folded, I'm going to take the smaller of the two and flip it over to the back side. And in the center 1/2 inch section, I'm going to cover this entirely with my adhesive. And I'm going to place this right down in the center section on my larger hinge, using those score lines to line everything up. So once I know that I have this in the right spot, I'll go ahead and use my bone folder to burnish this down. Once those hinges are together, I'm going to fold the larger one over to the back side. So I'll have the 3 center 1/2 inch sections. I'll apply my adhesive here to each of these 3 sections. Now I have already marked the center on my spine, so I know where I'm going to place this on the spine section. Usually my album spines are a little bit larger. This one's 1/4 inch smaller than what I normally do. I usually do 2.5 and it's 2 1/4, but I'm not going to add a ton of stuff to this album. So I wanted to make sure that the spine wasn't too large. Once I have my adhesive down, I'm going to just go ahead and use the marks that I have placed on my spine to set this in the center. It will also be the exact size top and bottom of my spine piece, which I don't often do because usually my spine is the same size as my covers, but because my covers come down a little bit, I'm making my pages the same exact size as the spine piece and smaller than the cover pieces. I'm just going to go ahead and use my bone folder here to make sure that this is adhered down to my spine and there are no gaps. It's nice and flush with the spine. That way when I put my pages in, everything holds really tightly and really well. And I'll go ahead and flip these up and I have room for my 4 pages and we're going to build those base pages next. Now these are 3 of my base pages. I'm going to make the 3rd one and show you how to do this. So first we need to cut 4 pieces of cardstock to 7.5 by 9.5. Then on the 9.5 inch side, we're going to score at 4.5 and 9 inches. Miter the ends on your 1/2 inch tab. And then we are going to fold on our score lines and burnish these folds. The more you burnish, the flatter your pages will lay. So that's why I like to burnish on both sides. We're going to make sure that this one here meets the page there, and then we're going to burnish this one closed. Again, on both sides, we'll give it the crispest fold. Then I'm going to open up and apply my adhesive to my 1/2 inch tab section here. And then I'm going to close that page to form that side loading pocket page. And I like to start from the scored side and bring this over. That way I know that everything again is nice and flat. Got a little bit of adhesive coming out, so I'm just going to wipe that up. And then I'm going to come here on the opposite side again, just to make sure everything is nice and crisp. Now here is where that is folded over. This will be the back side of the page, and I always put it on the bottom. I'm going to take my corner rounder here and I'm going to round these 2 corners only. And then bringing in my cover, I've got my 4 pages here. So the page is going to slip onto that 1/2 inch tab there. It'll be a little bit smaller top and bottom. And then when this album closes, it'll also, hopefully you'll be able to see that. Don't want to put the cover in the way. It will also, when this is extended, have a little bit of extra room here. So the pages won't be crushed whenever our album is covered. For now, we are going to leave our pages like this. I prefer to build and decorate my pages when they're not in the album. We will add those in after they are decorated. So this is all for the base album build. In the next tutorial, we will start building up the pages and then we'll go on to decorating them. I'll see you in the next tutorial.